Hearing none, he said, we'll proceed to the vote. Those non-voting members of the deacon's board are dismissed. That's you, boy. That's in the bylaws, too. Turner stood. My mother did ask me to tell you that we'll be leaving the parsonage just as soon as my father's well enough. We'll be moving over to Mrs. Cobb's house. My mother says to tell you that she would rather not have anyone think we are beholden to you in any way. He walked to the door and paused, his back to them. And she says for me to tell you this. Take whatever dang vote you please. Turner, said Deacon Hurd, if you hadn't come up with the idea of handing over one of the finest houses in Phippsburg to a pack like the Easons, none of this would have happened. Don't blame us for where your own ideas take you. Suddenly, Turner was back in his father's study. His father had just lit his pipe, and the sweet tobacco scent of it was curling around the room, mixing with the smell of leather and polished wood. He had come to the last heady page of The Origin of Species, had felt a thrill crawling up his back and into his gut with the closing sentence of praise and wonder. From so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. His father had looked up as he closed the book, and he had smiled. Who knows where these ideas will take us, he had said, but won't it be exciting to find out? They had nodded together, not only his father and son, but two people with an open world in front of them. The dang is from me, Turner said, and left the deacon's meeting room. He stood outside the door and felt everything in him start to drain away, until he stood there shaking and hoping he wouldn't cry, trying to breathe slowly so he wouldn't. He thought of Lizzie. What do you think you're doing? She would have said to him right then. Well, trying to help my father, for one. No, that's not what you're doing. You never could see things straight. You think you know so much. I've learned a lot in these last couple of days. You learn a lot in a god-awful place like this. When are you going to get out of there? He couldn't hear her answer. Lizzie, what am I going to do? I've messed up everything. If I'd never met you... If you'd never met me, I'd still be in Pownell. What I wouldn't have, well, you know what I wouldn't have. I don't have to say it. Turner went home to a house mostly dark. The light was turned low in his parents' bedroom, where, when Turner looked in, his father lay still and white, his scalp covered with linen bandages, the blankets pulled tightly around him right on up to his chin. His mother, wrapped in a blanket and sitting in a rocker, was asleep too, and Turner didn't wake her. Turner went into his room and stood by the window. The clouds were low, but the half-moon was lower still and shone a gray, feeble light on their quilted undersides. The spires of the high pine seemed about to poke up into them, and Turner imagined them ripping open the quilts and the feathery snow drifting down upon the town, making everything warm and cozy and weighted with sleep. Forms most beautiful and most wonderful. It was the last thing he thought of before the warm and cozy weight of his own quilt took him.